Hi, this is Riley. I'm going to do my presentation for assistive technology for students with visual impairments. Okay, so the beginning, I'm just going to do an overview of the population. So visual impairments are really a pretty big range, which I didn't really realize before I started this. Your first and kind of a very common one is going to be low vision, and that's simply an ocular condition where a person's visual acuity ranges from 20/70 to 20/200, which would technically be defined as legally blind, after best correction. So that 20/70 and 20/200 are after correction with glasses or contacts or something like that. Or visual field subtends the angle of 50 degrees or less. So I was actually kind of curious about what the 20/70 and 20/200 means. Basically, that 70 is 70. If you are a person with normal vision and you are looking at something like a billboard 70 feet away, a person with 20/70 vision would have to be standing 20 feet away from that billboard while you're standing 70 feet away from it. Same applies to the 20 and 200, so like if you were standing 200 feet away, they'd have to be standing 20. So I thought that was actually really interesting, because I never knew that. And then your next one is going to be blindness. This is, I feel like, kind of the one that everybody's going to think of when you say visual impairment, and that's basically another ocular condition where a person perceives light or less, or is unable to efficiently use their residual vision. The last one is going to be cortical visual impairment. This is a neurological condition related to the visual pathway where a person has difficulty in interpreting visual information. All are unique and have their own challenges, but all are, visual impairments that are going to have their own assistive technology. So, communication needs, especially for students, communication is such a prevalent thing with them, and writing is one of the biggest forms of that, really, of expression. So, writing can be a really problematic thing for people with poor vision. If you're blind, then it really can be a struggle, because it's challenging to learn those initial steps to writing. Now, if you're a student with low vision, you may be able to write, but it might be illegible, which can present some problems in, comprehending information and conveying information to your teacher. Typing is an effective long-term solution to this for visually impaired students. For low vision students, they can learn how to type on the keyboard correctly, and for other students, they have Braille keyboards that can work very well, but that can be very challenging to operate at first. Those computer systems can be tricky, especially for younger students that maybe don't have the best support in their schools. So when it comes to general assistive technology, students with visual disabilities, they may require a wide range of tools. You just never know. Low vision people with low visual impairments, many of them already have corrective glasses, which fix the problem, but sometimes they might need something as simple as a magnifying glass, as the one that's pictured here. But it could potentially range from going from a magnifying glass to expensive Braille printers. While those are really cool, they run $2,000 to $3,000, and that's not something that maybe a school can afford, but not, just a household. So the two types of assistive technology that I picked, the first one is Audible. I picked Audible because I would have never in my life considered this assistive technology for visual impairment, because this is just something that I use on a regular basis, and I know a lot of people use. But thinking about it, it is such a useful thing for somebody who is blind, which I think is the really cool thing about it, which is why I picked it. So if you don't know, Audible is an online podcast and audiobook service through Amazon that provides a wide range of literature. It's very accessible. You can easily download it on any app store or access it through the internet on your computer. And really the best part about this is it allows students with visual impairments the same access to books that students without visual impairments have. You know, if you're in your sophomore English class and you're reading The Great Gatsby, typically schools hand out paper copies of that, but with Audible it allows you to follow the same curriculum and listen to the same exact content and gain the same information. So it really is a wonderful thing for students with visual impairments. I will say there are some pros and cons to this. The pros, it is sort of cost effective. I wouldn't say it's very cost effective because it is $15 a month, and even then sometimes not all of the books are available to you, and you still have to pay $30, $40. So it's essentially kind of like you're going to be buying the hardback. If you think about it that way, it's not unreasonable to purchase books like this, to have them read to you. But it is a lot more effective than these Braille printers, that is for sure. Or something like that, or a screen reader, which we'll go into more detail later. Another pro, like I said before, it is iOS and Android compatible, so there should be no problem in accessing this in school or accessing this at home if you have any sort of device. So that is very useful. Cons, I had a hard time thinking of this, but the best thing that I realized is that some books really don't translate well to an audio format. Sometimes they're really made to be read on a piece of paper, and that can be a little hard because comprehension can be a problem for in this case. But if that's the only con, that's still a pretty good deal, and I think that this can be very useful for students with visual impairments in a lot of just different scenarios. So I'm gonna go ahead and go over to Audible and just look at it a little bit. You go ahead, you can go to the library. Right here I have It by Stephen King. All you have to do is you press listen now. 44 hours, that sounds like a long time, but still, that's very helpful. And you can, pick any category of things. There's a lot of stuff that you can choose from. It really is a great idea, and it's super easy to access. All you have to do is just press listen now, and you go ahead and you have lots and lots of books for you to pick from. So I will go back to the presentation here. So the next one I have is a complete opposite end of the spectrum, and this is a screen reader. So screen readers, they are kind of based on my research, one of the higher end things that you're going to get for a person with a visual impairment. The one that I chose to go from, because I think it looks kind of cool, is called the MagnaLink Voice 2. So just a little bit of background on them. Screen readers are a form of software that allow individuals with visual disabilities to read the text on a computer screen through a braille display or speech synthesizer. So the MagnaLink Voice 2 is a screen reader that is user-friendly and costs $2,100, a little over $2,100. That is a lot of money and not something that a lot of people have. We'll go ahead, and I just want to go and just look at the link here, so you can see on the website, and that's $2,100 without even some of the other options. Like a battery would be even more expensive, but really it's a cool thing. The MagnaLink stands here. You put a document underneath the camera. It takes that document, it scans it with the camera, and it reads it out loud to you. So it's pretty impressive how it does that. There are a lot of applications for this. It's pretty endless, and if every school had access to one of these for every student with a visual impairment, then it would make assignments so much easier that are on paper. I will note one thing that I was thinking about this when I was doing research with the MagnaLink, and it's that a lot of things are becoming virtual with schools nowadays, so it is going to eventually become, I think, outdated, because anything virtual is going to be able to be read out loud anyway. But still, I think that this is a useful thing, that if a school can afford the $2,100 price tag, then you could be putting students' assignments under there all the time and have it read to them out loud. I will say there are some pros and cons to this. Number one, pro, it allows a visually impaired person to use the computer, which is amazing. You can scan things on the screen. It reads it out loud to you. It's really pretty amazing. It allows you to create documents using processors like Microsoft or PowerPoint or things like that. Like it creates the opportunity for people with visual impairments to do things that they normally would not be able to do. And another really interesting thing, visually impaired people can read articles on the internet. And not only that, but one of the reasons why I like this picture in the kitchen right here is you can tell they're using it for a cookbook, which is something that it's not a school-related activity, but it is a home-related activity, and it applies to a lot of different walks of life. The cons are going to be a pretty big one. Only listening to a screen reader can cause visually impaired people not to know how to correctly spell words. So much of learning how to spell is reading those words visually, and this is going to be kind of a hurdle that visually impaired people are going to have to jump through. But it's one of those things that they will learn over time. It's just going to take a little bit longer than somebody who's not visually impaired. The obvious con is it is very expensive. Not many schools or people can justify spending $2,200 on a screen reader. Although it would be great, it is quite expensive. And then the last thing that I can think of is that really the voice can be quite dull. They don't have much inflection in the voice, which is gonna, I know from my personal experience, if I'm listening to a monotone voice, it's going to put me right to sleep. I could really see this becoming a problem for students, especially if they're reading any sort of narrative text in a completely monotone voice. I think that it would cause students to immediately lose interest, which really will not assist with comprehension at all. So that definitely is a con to it. But all in all, I do think that this is a really fascinating piece of technology, and it has so many uses, from in the kitchen to working on narrative assignments in English class. It would be very useful to have. So that is the end of my presentation. Those are my citations, and that is it. Thank you very much.